Hello, this is Shannon. I'm very grateful that you've stopped by my channel. Today I'll be making a slimline card with products by Sunny Studio and My Favorite Things. Starting with a 3 3/4 by 5.5 inch piece of smooth white cardstock, I've cut it right down the center lengthwise with one of the Grassy Hills dies from My Favorite Things. I've also cut a road from gravel gray cardstock with the On the Road die, also from My Favorite Things. You will also need two pieces of 3 3/4 by 8.5 inch smooth white cardstock. I would recommend anything from 65 pound to 100 pound cardstock. Here I use the On the Road die cut to trace an area where I will do some ink blending. I lightly erase the lines I've drawn so I can barely see them. Sometimes when you color with Copics or do ink blending over pencil lines, they become difficult to erase, or at least that's been my experience. So finishing up with that, I will bring in my waffle flower stencil mat and we're going to ink blend the two borders using Jalapeno popper dye ink from My Favorite Things. I ink up my brush and tap off onto my stencil mat and start my ink blending going in a circular motion. I'm going to keep most of my ink towards the grassy portion of the border, going back a couple times to darken up my ink. Always tapping off on my stencil mat before I bring the brush to the paper. This will prevent splotching. Even though sometimes when you do ink blending with dye inks from our favorite stamp companies, it might look splotchy to begin with. If you step away for a little while, the ink will smooth out and appear much better after it's given time to set. Here I'm bringing in some sour apple dye ink, and this in person you can tell more of a difference in the colors, but on camera it looks pretty much to be the same as the jalapeno popper. Okay, and here I have the On the Road die cut, and I'm using some extreme black ink from My Favorite Things, just inking up the perimeter of this die cut. I'm just trying to give some visual interest to it. I didn't want to have just a flat gray die cut. And always tapping off that ink on the stencil mat before I bring it to the paper. Next, I'm going to ink blend this portion of the panel. I had to re-ink my ink pad there. Just covering the portion that I had drawn the pencil lines for and erased them. Some of the background will peek through from when I put the die cut borders down, and this will ensure that it appears that it's still grass, or attempt to have it appear as it's still grass. You'll get what I mean in a second. And still inking. Always tapping off on the stencil mat before I bring the brush to the paper. Here I'm checking, flip it over, checking to see if that is enough ink. And here you'll see I have to flip these around. The Grassy Hills die goes right up against the On the Road border, but it doesn't match exactly. Here I'm using some acrylic matte medium to adhere the On the Road die cut to the panel. I use acrylic matte medium because if any of the glue happens to erp out from behind the die cut, It dries clear and it dries matte, so you can barely tell, if you can tell at all, if any of the glue should come out from behind the die cut. And here I'm inking the grass portion of the border and then inking the perimeter of the panel instead of, I'm sorry, not inking, gluing. I'm gluing it so that I don't have to put glue on the entire die cut and have it stick to my table. Just adjust that a little bit. There we go. Next, I'll let that dry and bring in my paper trimmer. I use my finger to bring the image to the edge of my trimmer and just cut off the overhang. I'll do it again. Here I'm just coming up to the edge of that panel, using my finger to get it flush with the panel and cutting off the overhang. And next I'll cut off the portion that'll be the horizon. There we go. And I think this doesn't quite match up yet. I have to trim a little bit more off the bottom. There we go. Now I'm bringing my waffle flower stencil mat again, and I'm going to mark my road border or road panel so I know where to create my sunset. This is Coral Crush dye ink by My Favorite Things. When I recorded this video, I was not aware that My Favorite Things no longer carries this color ink. The next ink I will use is Peach Bellini. They also do not carry the Peach Bellini. For Coral Crush, I recommend Ripe Persimmon Distress Ink. And for the Peach Bellini, a good match to that is Dried Marigold Distress Inks. And I'm just creating a sunset or a sunrise, depending on how you look at it. I guess it would be a sunset because I'm going to have light blue in the sky. Always tapping off that blending brush before I bring, oh, now I made myself a liar. I guess it's okay when you're using the light color. Next is Summer Splash. I'm going to clean up my stencil mat before I use the Summer Splash because I don't want to contaminate my blending brush and create mud. Here we go. And I'm going to make sure not to cross the Peach Bellini with the Summer Splash. Again, trying to avoid creating mud. Just blending in circular motion. Here you can tell the difference between where the Peach Bellini ends and where the Summer Splash begins, but as it dries, it is more difficult to identify. Here I'm bringing in the Ray of Light stencil. This is by My Favorite Things, and I'm using the same ink colors over themselves through the stencil just to create some light rays. Next is Peach Bellini again. And I don't have any adhesive on this stencil. I'm just holding it with my hand. I'm going to wipe off the stencil so I don't contaminate my blending brush with the orange inks. Next is Summer Splash. Again, going over, tapping off my blending brush before I bring it, and then realizing I don't have any adhesive on this. I can only go in one direction at the end of the stencil since the pressure is all the way at the bottom. Holding that down. And I think this is right about where I get impatient and start bringing that blending brush from the ink pad directly to the paper. You can get away with it with the lighter colors. Here we have images from the Passionate Penguins by Sunny Studio. These adorable little penguins are riding in a convertible, and from here I'm going to play some music for you while I do the coloring. I'm leaving the caps of the markers on the desktop so that you can see what colors I'm using. I'll be right back. Next, I am stamping the sentiment from the Sunny Sentiments by Sunny Studios. And the sentiment reads, sometimes you just have to create your own sunshine. I'm using VersaFine Onyx Black pigment ink so that I can heat set or heat emboss the sentiment. Here I'm just smushing down the sentiment onto my panel, and I'll ink it up again so that gives it a lot of moisture for that embossing powder to stick to. Next we'll sprinkle on some embossing powder, and this is waffle flour, no, I'm sorry, wow, superfine clear embossing powder. And here I have my Wagner heat tool on setting number 2, and I'm letting this warm up just a second before I bring it to the paper. I didn't let it warm up long enough. This is what happens when you don't let it warm up long enough. Your paper warps some, but it'll be fine in the end. Here I'm stamping the sentiment from the same stamp set on the inside of the card. So I have a slimline card base, and I used my 12 by 12 MISTI so that I could put the entire card base in my MISTI. And I'm stamping a sentiment that reads, wishing you sunshine and smiles. And I'll also, this is with Extreme Black ink by My Favorite Things. And I'll stamp that twice since my first image didn't come out clear. And after that, I will stamp the sunshine with some Butterscotch dye ink by My Favorite Things. All of the supplies that I've used to create this card are linked below. And if you would, if you like this video or would like to see any of my future videos, hit the like and the subscribe button. If you hit the notification bell after you subscribe, YouTube will let you know the next time one of my videos is posted. Here we're just assembling this card, and I'm using my desktop to line it up. There we go, just hold that down for a second. And I also colored a couple of penguins off screen. Here they're so adorable. This little penguin I have in my tweezers right now, it looks as if he's dancing, and the other one on the left is giggling at him. I think they're so cute. Clean up some of that ripped out glue. And here we'll more of the same acrylic matte medium that I used in the earlier portion of this video. And I have some double-sided foam tape, doubled up double-sided 3M foam tape. Also, I did want to mention that in the portion of the video where I'm coloring the convertible, I used BG11, BG13, and BG15. What I did off screen is I did a second coat, including the BG18 and excluding the 11. I was much happier with the blend. Here, these are called Coral Droplets by Lucy's Cards. Add a few of these embellishments. And excuse my hat for getting in the way. And I decided to put 2 more. And that'll just about do it. I want to thank you so much for watching this video. I would love to hear from you in the comments below. Let me know what you liked about this project or even what you might have done differently. Your feedback means the world to me. All of the supplies I've used to create this video are linked below. Thanks for watching. See you next video. Bye for now.